Okay, be honest with me. Is it weird that after leaving Joker 2, I was kind of getting Rise of Skywalker vibes? Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today our movie in the middle is Joker, Folie, Deux.
It's simple. We killed the Batman.
Joker, Folie, Deux is the sequel to Todd Phillips' unique take on Joker, following Arthur Fleck as he embraces his mantle of the Joker, falling deeper into madness after meeting his new fascination, Harley Quinn. It stars Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, Catherine Keener, Steve Coogan, and Brendan Gleeson. So this was one of the movies I was most excited for this year, high on my top 10, and as we were getting closer to it, and I was seeing the trailers more and more, I was getting so excited for this movie. And then it was getting scathing reviews. Like, I was floored at how bad people... And it's not even, like, just the reviews. It's, like, behind-the-scenes stuff. People are blaming each other for how bad it is. It's weird. This movie has just gotten such bad press. And I thought, like, I have to like this movie, right? Or at least something about it. It can't be that bad. And I will be honest, after seeing it, I can honestly say I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but the longer I sit with it, I understand it a little bit more. But let's start off with the good stuff, because there is definitely a lot of good stuff in this movie, specifically the cinematography. If you thought that the first one was good with the cinematography, oh my god, it just looks so good in this movie, especially in the musical sequences. They just went so hard with it because they could. And my god, every shot is just beautiful. The camera work, the cinematography, everything. And not only that, but they had a very cool something in the beginning that I wasn't expecting that is very on brand for this movie and was very, very cool. And honestly, I would have just watched a whole movie of that. And of course, the acting is going to be incredible in this movie. You have Joaquin Phoenix, you have Lady Gaga, you have Brendan Gleeson and Catherine Keener. It's going to be really, really good. And the acting was. And there is one scene in particular that is probably the most emotional scene of the movie. And it was really getting to me. Like, I was really invested in that. And in the acting specifically between the main two, Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, they were really, really good together. They definitely had this chemistry. In trying to figure out how to review this movie, honestly, aside from the highs, I'm not going to specifically do middles and lows. I more so want to talk about specific aspects of the movie, because those highs, middle, and lows kind of are all mixed in with these things. So I'm going to talk about specific parts of the movie rather than split it up into those categories. Firstly, the musical aspect. This is something that I have been defending since they came out with this idea of making it a musical, because people were saying, oh, it's a musical, now it's automatically stupid. I'm like, first of all, that's stupid. That's a dumb thought. Just because it's going to be a musical makes it automatically stupid. You don't know that. You cannot like musicals. It's definitely like a personal, take to like musicals or not, because it's a very specific thing. But it doesn't automatically mean that the movie is going to be bad. But specifically because I was like, yeah, this does kind of make sense. It's not going to be a traditional musical. It's going to be an expression of this shared delusion, which is quite literally the titular part of this movie. And being that it's two insane people coming together, finding love, being the only two people in the world that understand each other, I thought, you know what, that could actually work out really, really well. Especially because you have this older vintage vibe to it. I feel like that could work really well. There's obviously a couple different ways that you can incorporate this. You can have it, like any one musical number be in his head, and it all takes place in 2 seconds, and then you cut back to wherever he was standing or sitting, and people are like, hey, what are you doing? Or it could be all in his head, but it's in real time, and then again you cut back to the outside and he's dancing all over the place and people are like, what's going on? Or it could just be its own separate thing. They kind of incorporate all of these techniques to make it work. And for the most part, I think that worked out pretty well. The problem actually wasn't the fact that they were doing a musical. That was fine. It was how they incorporated it into the story. Because aside from the first maybe 2 or 3 songs, it doesn't actually feel like the music is incorporated into the narrative. it feels spliced in between. I don't know if you've ever seen Chicago. It sort of does that same thing, but here I wanted it very much incorporated into the story, and it wasn't. It was more so just like scenes and then a musical number that's sort of, a metaphor, and then more scenes and then another one. And I kind of wanted it blended together more. Now, the other problem with this is that the story itself is a little bit more boring than I would have expected. The entire movie takes place in just about 2 locations, neither of which is that, at least visually, interesting. The first is Arkham Mental Asylum, and then the other one is a courtroom. I never really expected that a Joker movie would take place heavily in a courtroom drama, and while that can be interesting, I didn't expect it to be the whole movie. And I think this is heavily, and pretty much primarily, where the contention in this movie takes place is that Todd Phillips didn't really want to make a sequel. And so I think, from what I've heard, from what people have said, the way he made this movie was to piss off the people who watched the first one, or at least wanted to go in a different direction on purpose with it. But in doing so, he also pissed off everybody else. And the movie kind of, at a certain point, it's like okay up to a certain point, like you can save it, and then something happens, and it deflates the whole movie. Like they were building up all this tension into something, and then it just... And technically, it does work narratively. It makes sense. I understand the way he was going with it. It's just not really as engaging. And it does kind of bring up this interesting question of asking ourselves, what do we want out of these movies? Do we want really good character study? Do we want a good story and themes? And obviously we want all that, and this movie does give us sort of that. But, as much as we don't want to admit it, we go to this movie to see violence. There wasn't a lot of those moments that are shocking in this movie. There's a couple, but not a lot, not especially like in the first one. It's weird for me to say that, but I think it's true that we're all a little bit disappointed that that didn't really happen. One thing I will say about this movie is that I've heard a lot of reviews, a lot of thoughts, a lot of people saying that this is a movie for those incels of the first one. This is a movie defending those actions of doing whatever you want, doing violence because the world hurt you. And I mean, yes, quite literally the plot of the movie is being in defense of not Arthur's actions, but basically they're trying to prove that he's insane so that he can get better care that's not in Arkham Asylum. That's basically what the movie is. That isn't the movie defending the Joker's actions. Like, I think this movie is a lot of ands. We can be looking out for mental health and worried about people and what they do. And we can say, hey, these guys have been hurt. And, and, you can't kill 5 people. I'm sorry, like, you can't kill 1 person. Yeah, obviously both can be true. And I don't think this movie is defending, hey, you can just do whatever you want because society hurt you. No. It's clearly not what it's trying to say. And very much by the end, it's not trying to say that. I can guarantee you that. But a big, big part of why this movie is not as engaging as it could have been, for me at least, is because of the role of Harley Quinn. Which, again, in a lot of ways, they got right, technically. She's a psychiatrist. She is toxic, she lies, she messes with him, but she shares in this fantasy, she's very loving. They had all of that there. And yet, I couldn't help but leave the movie feeling like she was very underutilized. Like, I expected this to be the Joker and Harley Quinn movie. And that they were going to be sharing this delusion together, we were going to see that, we were going to see them do chaotic things, and, that we were just going to see glimpses of how other people are seeing them, but mostly it's going to be in their heads and their fantasies. And this movie is a lot more grounded than that. And instead of it being the Joker and Harley Quinn movie, it's the Joker movie featuring Harley Quinn at some spots. And it's interesting because it's like Harley Quinn is influencing this narrative and this character, but it's not both of their movies. And again, with this specific part with Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn and just in general, the most amount of disappointment comes in the last 20 minutes or so when one big thing happens. And if they had gone a different way with it, I might have been able to leave feeling like, oh, I'm going to rewatch this. Like, it was definitely good for at least a one-time watch. But I can't say I want to go back and rewatch it a lot like I did with the first one, because there's not those moments of anticipation I'm waiting for, because I know it's just going to kind of deflate. I will say, the ending itself, like the very end, is very interesting narratively, thematically. There's a lot of full circles coming around, and it is something that is very shocking that I did not really expect. I've said it a lot, but once again, technically it does work for the story that Todd Phillips wanted to tell, or at least was forced to tell. But I can't help but feel, and a lot of other people have said this as I've talked to them, like we've sort of just been let down and duped. It's like, okay, so, all right. So overall, Joker Folie Deux, I think in and of itself, is not as bad as people are saying. It's not as interesting as it definitely could have been. It's not perfect by any means. It's definitely not as good as the first one. But there's a lot of good stuff in it. The music itself is pretty good. There was a lot of numbers that I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm into this. It's I think, in taking the two movies as a whole and the characters as a whole and probably our expectations, it just kind of falls flat. But I would say it's definitely still worth a watch in the theaters, because there is a lot of stuff that is very powerful, specifically, again, that one scene that's very emotional. And I would say that no matter the scathing reviews, definitely I would say see it once, just because there's some good stuff in it that you might not get otherwise. I'm going to give Joker Folie Deux a 2 out of 4, making it my next true movie in the middle. Well, guys, let me know what you thought. I really want to hear all your comments below, because this is one of those, I think this might be the most polarized, well, maybe not even polarizing, but just contentious movie of the year. There's a lot of thoughts going around about it, and I think it's one of those movies where the thoughts aren't even all about just one thing. People have a lot of thoughts about a lot of different parts of this, and it's not just, this is why it's bad. It's, this is why it's bad, this is why it's good, this is why it's okay. So I want to hear all your thoughts. So let me know in the comments below, and as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and put on a happy face. I'll see you guys later.